Tonight's story isn't about medals, or battles, or the moments history books like to underline. It's about the words that never made it home. Before we start, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this kind of long, quiet storytelling. Tonight's journey is not through gunfire, but through memory. Through letters written in silence, words carried but never sent. Let's begin. Dear Mother, I don't know if this letter will ever reach you, or if it even makes sense to write it. But tonight, with the snow falling outside and the barracks quiet, it feels like the only thing I can do. So I'll write, if only to fill the silence. We arrived in Europe under a sky the color of iron. The air was colder than I'd ever felt, sharp and biting, sliding through coats and uniforms as though fabric didn't matter. The trucks that carried us rattled over roads cracked by tanks and frost. Every mile seemed heavier than the last. When I first stepped off the transport, duffel bag slung over my shoulder, the ground crunched with frozen mud beneath my boots. The village nearby was half ruined, roofs caved in, windows blown out, smoke curling faintly from chimneys that still worked. Children peeked out from doorways, their faces thin, eyes wide with the kind of caution I'd never known as a boy. I wanted to wave. I didn't. My hand stayed stiff on the strap of my bag. War changes even the smallest gestures. The camp itself was nothing much. Wooden huts lined in rows, smoke drifting from a single stovepipe. A motor pool coated in frost. A few trucks, tarps sagging under snow. Men moved slowly, carrying boxes, hauling gear, stamping boots to fight the cold. It wasn't chaos, and it wasn't order. It was something in between. Inside the barracks, the air was thick with smoke from a stove that couldn't keep up with the winter. The bunks were lined tight, blankets thin. The smell was sweat, wool, damp wood, and tobacco. Not unpleasant, just heavy. I dropped my bag on the floor and sat down, boots caked in mud, feeling the weight of distance settle over me. That's the thing about arrival. You expect to feel purpose, energy, readiness. Instead, what you feel is absence. Absence of home. Absence of familiar voices. Absence of anything you can call your own. The sergeant gave us the usual speech, about discipline, about orders, about keeping ourselves sharp. But his voice felt muffled, like it was coming from behind the storm. All I could hear was the wind outside, scraping across the roofs, whispering through cracks. That night, I tried to sleep, but the quiet kept me awake. It wasn't silence. Never true silence. Boots shuffled outside. Someone coughed. A man whispered a prayer under his breath. But compared to the roar of the ocean that carried us here, compared to the laughter of family left behind, it felt too still. Too strange. I lay there staring at the ceiling beams, thinking of home. Thinking of the smell of bread in the kitchen, of the sound of my father's voice, low and steady. Thinking of the dog barking at shadows on the porch. All the little things you never write in letters because they seem too small. Out here, those little things were the only things that mattered. If I could write what I feel, I'd tell you that this place already feels older than me. The walls groan like they've seen more winters than any man here will live. The snow doesn't fall gently, it presses, heavy, like a hand pushing us down. But don't worry, Mother. I'll be fine. That's what sons are supposed to say, isn't it? Even when they don't believe it. Somewhere in the night, I heard a train in the distance. Not near, not close enough to see. Just the faint, hollow echo of wheels and iron. It felt like a ghost of normal life, passing just out of reach. The men shifted in their bunks, blankets rustling. Someone laughed in his sleep. Someone else muttered a name. I closed my eyes and let the sound of the train carry me, imagining it would keep going west until it crossed the ocean and reached you. But when I opened them again, I was still here. Still in Europe. Still in a wooden hut filled with men who were strangers, bound together by silence and orders. I don't know if I'll ever send this. I don't even know if I should. But tonight, I needed to write. To put these thoughts somewhere other than my head. If you never read this, maybe that's best. But for now, it's enough that the words exist. Your son. And with that, the first letter lay folded, unsigned, unsent. Just another secret kept by the war. Dear Father. It's late now, though I suppose time doesn't mean much here. The days run into one another, each one carrying the same weight of waiting. Still, tonight I thought I'd write, even if I never send it. Life in the barracks has its own rhythm, slow and uneven. The hut creaks with every gust of wind, boards groaning as if the building itself is weary. The stove in the corner tries its best, but the heat never reaches far. Men crowd close, boots stretched toward the faint glow, shoulders hunched, faces dim in the flicker. The bunks are narrow, lined like teeth in a jaw. Blankets are scratchy, stuffed thin, always smelling faintly of damp wool. Boots clutter the floor, some polished, some caked with mud no one bothers to clean. Helmets hang from bedposts. Rifles lean against walls, always within reach. The sound inside isn't loud. It's layers of quiet, the rasp of a match as someone lights a cigarette, the low murmur of voices trading stories, the soft scratch of pencils on paper as letters are written. Letters that may or may not ever leave this place. I've tried to write home myself. I begin, stop, fold the page away. The words don't come easy. How do you write about waiting? How do you write about the long stretch of hours where nothing happens, where the world feels paused? Jensen sits across from me most nights, shuffling a deck of cards so worn the corners bend like wilted leaves. He doesn't play much. He just shuffles, the steady slap of paper against paper filling the silence. Sometimes he deals a hand for himself, stares at it, then gathers the cards and begins again. Mitchell, the youngest, writes constantly. Page after page. His pencil scratches like it's racing against time. I asked once if he was writing letters home. He shrugged and said, sort of. He didn't explain further. Sometimes I catch a glimpse of his pages, not letters, not really. More like fragments. Drawings of trees. Half a sentence about a girl. Lines of poetry he probably never showed anyone. Morales hums. Always humming. Little songs from back home in Arizona, tunes half remembered, broken and stitched together again. Some nights the humming is soft, like he's singing to himself. Other nights, it's louder, carrying through the hut until someone tells him to knock it off. But even then, he smiles, shakes his head, and hums under his breath. And then there's Doc Rhodes. He's older than most of us, calm in a way that makes you trust him without trying. He moves between bunks, checking coughs, handing out aspirin, making sure everyone drinks water even when it tastes like tin. He never writes. He never hums. He never shuffles cards. He just observes. Quiet. Steady. A constant presence when everything else feels uncertain. The barracks smells of tobacco and sweat, wool and damp wood. The air carries a heaviness that clings to clothes, to skin, to memory. Sometimes it feels suffocating. Other times, it feels like the only thing keeping us together. Father, if you were here, I think you'd understand the way men turn small things into lifelines. A game of cards. A half-finished letter. A song hummed off-key. None of it matters much on its own, but together, it makes the hours pass. Without those things, the waiting would crush us. The sergeant comes and goes, his boots sharp against the floorboards, his voice clipped and steady. He checks bunks, checks weapons, checks discipline. But once he leaves, the hut exhales. Shoulders drop, voices rise again, pencils scrape against paper. The storm outside fades back into the background. At night, the sounds blend into a kind of lullaby. Cards shuffling. Pages turning. A man coughing in his sleep. Boots shifting on the floor. It isn't peace, but it's something close enough to let you drift, if only for a while. I lie awake sometimes, staring at the beams above, wondering if you'd recognize me now. Not for the uniform or the rifle or the mud on my boots. But for the way silence has settled into me. The way waiting has become my work. If I could write honestly, I'd tell you this place feels both endless and forgotten. It's not the battles that weigh on us, it's the stillness between them. The barracks is more prison than shelter, yet it's also the only place that feels like home. Strange, isn't it? That wood and smoke and silence can carry more weight than steel or fire. The candle burns low as I write this. Men shift in their bunks, the stove sighs, the wind presses against the walls. Tomorrow will come the same as today, and the day after that. But for now, tonight, I'll fold this page and set it aside. Another letter written, never sent. Your son. Dear brother. If I ever put these words to paper and mailed them, you'd probably laugh. You'd say, how can a war story be about men sitting around a table? But that's the truth of it. Most of war isn't fighting. It's waiting. And while you wait, you notice the men beside you more than anything else. There are 4 who make up the circle I spend most of my hours with. First, Morales. Young, full of restless energy, always searching for a way to make silence into something else. He hums songs I don't know, Spanish ballads, ranch tunes, little fragments stitched together. Some nights he hums loud enough that it carries across the hut, and someone throws a boot at him. Other nights it's just under his breath, quiet enough to blend with the wind outside. He tells stories too, always half true, always stretched. He swears he once rode a horse across the desert without water for 3 days. We don't believe him, but we let him tell it anyway, because the telling fills the time. Then there's Jensen. Older, worn, the kind of man who doesn't waste words. He shuffles his deck of cards constantly, the paper edges dark with sweat and dust. Some nights he deals himself a game of solitaire. Other nights he lays the cards out like patterns only he can read. When he does speak, it's usually sharp, short, but sometimes, late in the night, he'll let slip a sentence about home. A daughter's laugh. A wife's cooking. 3 kids, if the rumor is true. He never says more than a sentence, but that's enough to let you glimpse the weight he carries. Mitchell is the youngest. Barely old enough to shave, though he tries to. He carries that notebook everywhere, scribbling as if the pencil might run out at any second. Not full letters, fragments, sketches, half-thoughts. He showed me once, a sketch of a tree, a single line of poetry, the outline of a face half-finished. He writes like a man trying to keep something alive, though he never says what. The storm outside doesn't scare him as much as the storm inside does. I think writing is the only thing that steadies him. And then there's Rhodes. Document older, calm, steady. He doesn't join the card games, doesn't hum, doesn't write. He moves quietly, checking eyes, handing out aspirin, reminding us to drink water, to eat even when we don't feel like it. He hums sometimes too, but not songs. Just sounds, low and steady, like a man marking time. He has that presence, the kind that makes you trust him without trying. We sit together most evenings, gathered around a table under the glow of a lantern. The cards slap soft against the wood. Morales hums, Mitchell scribbles, Jensen mutters. Rhodes just watches, sometimes offering a word, sometimes not. Outside, the storm rages, or the silence stretches. Inside, we make our own rhythm. Brother, you'd laugh at how little it takes to pass the hours. A deck of cards. A notebook. A song hummed off-key. That's all it is. That's what holds us together. War sounds like guns and explosions in the papers. Here, it sounds like cards shuffling, pencils scratching, men breathing in time with one another. The barracks isn't warm, but when we gather like that, the space feels smaller, tighter, steadier. We're bound not by orders, not by flags, but by the fact that we share the same silence. When the lantern flickers, shadows stretch across their faces, Morales grinning, Jensen frowning, Mitchell chewing the inside of his cheek, Rhodes calm as ever. Each face etched deeper than it should be for its age. Sometimes I wonder if we'll remember each other years from now. Not as brothers, not as heroes, but as the men who filled the silence when the world outside disappeared. If I could send this, I'd tell you war isn't made of battles. It's made of men like these. Men who hum, who shuffle, who scribble, who watch. Men who pass the time while the storm presses against the walls. That's the truth no one writes down, but it's the truth I'll carry. Tonight, as I fold this page, the lantern sputters low. The cards whisper in Jensen's hands. Morales hums softer now, nearly asleep. Mitchell's pencil scratches still. Rhodes watches, calm, steady. And I think, if I forget everything else, I'll remember this. Your brother. Dear mother. If this page ever found its way to you, I think you'd say it sounded lonely. And maybe it is. But more than loneliness, it's waiting. It's the silence between orders that fills most of our days. I thought you should know that. There's a certain heaviness in hours when nothing happens. It settles over the barracks like the dust in the corners, piling up without notice. You feel it in your chest, in your arms, in the way every movement becomes slower. Men sit at tables, boots planted, eyes far away, as if orders might arrive if they stare long enough into the air. The sergeant walks through sometimes, voice clipped, eyes sharp, boots striking the floorboards. But when he leaves, the hut falls back into its rhythm, the sound of breathing, the shift of blankets, the quiet scrape of a chair on wood. That's the real war, I think. Not bullets, not shouting. Just waiting. The storm outside comes and goes, pressing against the windows. Snow one day, rain the next. Always something to remind us the world is still moving even when we aren't. But in here, the world feels frozen. Morales tries to fight it. He tells jokes, half funny, sometimes just words strung together to fill the silence. He hums louder, sings even, until someone tells him to hush. But the truth is, even he can't escape the weight of it. I see it in his eyes when the humming stops. Jensen shuffles his cards, slower now. The slap of paper against wood is softer, drawn out. He doesn't even look at the hands anymore. He just moves the cards like a man counting time, one shuffle at a time, one day at a time. Mitchell writes more when the waiting grows heavy. His pencil scratches like it's trying to dig through the page. He doesn't show anyone anymore. Whatever he's putting down, it's for him alone. Sometimes I think it isn't writing at all, just movement to keep from breaking. And Rhodes? He watches. Always steady, always calm. He moves from bunk to bunk, checking throats, checking eyes, passing water, pretending the waiting doesn't exist. But I know he feels it too. Even his humming stops in these hours. Mother, I wanted to tell you about the quiet here. It isn't like the quiet at home. It isn't the stillness of dawn in the fields, or the hush of night when the house settles. This quiet is heavier. It doesn't rest. It presses, like snow piling on a roof until it creaks. I tried to write you once. I began the page with, "I'm well," because that's what sons are supposed to say. But then I stopped. What comes after that? I couldn't tell you about the cold, about the silence, about how waiting can feel longer than marching. I couldn't tell you that some nights I stare at the ceiling and wonder if time has stopped altogether. So I folded the page, blank after that first line, and tucked it away. Maybe someday I'll finish it. Or maybe it will stay that way forever, just "I'm well" and nothing else. Men pass the hours in different ways. Some clean their rifles again and again until the metal shines. Some sharpen knives already sharp. Some lie on bunks staring at the beams above, as if answers might be carved into the wood. And me? I sit with pen in hand, words half-formed, wondering if writing them matters. These letters may never leave my hands, but somehow writing them feels like breathing. Like proof I'm still here. If you never read this, Mother, that's all right. Maybe it's better that way. But tonight, with the silence pressing harder than the snow, I needed to put these words somewhere. Even if they never find you. The candle is low now. The cards whisper. Morales hums, soft as a sigh. Mitchell scribbles. Rhodes watches. Outside, the snow presses on the roof. Inside, we wait. And in that waiting, I realize, this is the real shape of war. Not noise. Not fire. Just silence, stretched so long it begins to speak. Your son. Dear sister. Tonight I write to you from memory of the road. Not a battle. Not a firefight. Just a patrol through a village that no longer exists. If I ever sent this, you'd probably wonder why I bothered writing about it. But some nights, the quiet moments weigh more than the loud ones. We left the barracks just past midnight. The sky was overcast, the moon hidden behind heavy clouds, leaving the world dim and gray. Our boots crunched softly on frozen mud, rifles slung low, breaths visible in thin streams of mist. No one spoke. Orders had already been given, and besides, words felt wrong in air this still. The road wound between fields stiff with frost. A barn leaned half-collapsed, its roof broken, its walls sagging inward. Fences stood at angles, rails missing where would have been taken for fires. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked once, sharp and hollow, then fell silent again. The village sat like a skeleton, all ribs and shadow. Roofs blown open. Windows hollow, black squares staring back. Chimneys crooked against the sky, some still exhaling faint curls of smoke, proof that someone, somewhere, still lit fires to keep the cold at bay. We moved slowly, rifles ready, eyes on every dark corner. But there was no sound but our boots, no movement but the slow drift of snowflakes through ruined doorways. I remember stepping past a church, its steeple cracked, bell gone. The stained glass had shattered long ago, but fragments clung to the frame, catching faint light. Reds, blues, yellows, broken but still bright against the gray. I thought of you then, sister, and the little church back home where we'd sit on Sundays. The organ, the hymns, the smell of wood polish and candles. Strange how a ruin could pull me across an ocean in a heartbeat. Morales walked just ahead of me, his humming silenced for once. His shoulders looked smaller under the weight of his pack. Jensen followed behind, boots steady, cards tucked somewhere in his pocket even here. Mitchell brought up the rear, notebook hidden but close, eyes darting from shadow to shadow. Rhodes walked in the center, calm, steady, every step measured. We passed a well in the village square, its stones rimed with frost. Buckets lay tipped on their sides, ropes frozen stiff. I imagine children once gathered there, shouting, laughing, splashing.
Now only our boots marked the square. Sister, I thought you'd like to know that even here, in a place the war had emptied, life left traces. A curtain fluttered in one window, though no wind blew. A pair of shoes sat on a doorstep, covered in snow. A bicycle leaned against a wall, its tires flat, its frame rusting. Small things. Ordinary things. Proof that people had lived here once, and maybe still did, somewhere just out of sight. The patrol lasted hours, though it felt longer. Each step stretched by the silence, each shadow lengthened by the dim light. We expected danger at every turn, but none came. Instead, we found only the echo of lives paused. A child's toy half buried in snow. A loaf of bread turned to stone on a table. A picture frame, glass shattered, face inside still smiling faintly. By the time we turned back toward camp, the sky had begun to pale. The first hints of dawn painted the horizon in gray-blue. The village lay behind us, empty once more, our footprints the only mark we left. Back at the barracks, men dropped onto bunks, exhausted. Morales rubbed his eyes, Jensen set his cards aside, Mitchell scratched a few lines into his notebook before sleep finally took him. Rhodes, as always, checked us each, silent but steady, before sitting down himself. I stayed awake a little longer, thinking of the church window, the shoes, the bicycle. Thinking of home. Sister, if I sent this letter, it would sound like nothing happened. And in truth, nothing did. No shots fired. No enemies seen. Just a patrol through silence. But sometimes, that's what weighs the most. The empty streets. The traces left behind. The quiet that speaks louder than noise. That's the part no one writes about, but it's the part I'll never forget. So I fold this page too, and signed, unsent. Another letter written only to fill the silence. Your brother. Dear Mother. I'm not sure why I write these words. Maybe it's because the quiet here makes the past louder. Maybe because memory feels closer than the walls of this barracks. Tonight, as the wind presses against the hut and the lamp flickers low, I feel like I'm living more in yesterday than in today. There's a window near my bunk. Frost creeps across the glass in patterns like veins, curling and branching, always shifting with the cold. Outside, the snow drifts down in silence, coating the ground, softening every edge of ruin. I sit by that window sometimes, and when I do, the world outside stops being Europe. It becomes home. I see the fields first. Wide and open, rows stretching under the summer sun. I see the way the air shimmered on hot afternoons, the way cicadas hummed, steady and endless. I see Father's figure at the edge of the land, one hand on the plow, his shoulders heavy but steady. He rarely spoke then, but his silence carried weight. Stronger than words, steadier than orders. I see the house too. The porch with its crooked boards. The dog sleeping in the shade, tail twitching in dreams. The kitchen filled with the smell of bread and coffee. You, Mother, moving between stove and table, scolding when chores went undone, humming when you thought no one heard. The frost on the glass bends these images, but I cling to them anyway. Out here, memory is warmth. Memory is shelter. Without it, the barracks would be nothing but wood and smoke and cold. Mother, I don't know if you'd believe how sharp the little things become. The way the floorboards creaked in the same spot every time. The way the sun fell through the curtains in the front room. The sound of the dog's paws scratching against the door when he wanted in. Out here, those details matter more than anything. They return sharper than photographs. Sometimes, in the drift of sleep, I hear your voice. Not clearly, not words. Just the sound of it, the rise and fall, the rhythm of comfort. It startles me awake, because for a second I believe I've gone back. Then the cold air bites, the stove cracks, and I know I'm still here. The men carry their memories differently. Morales speaks of his grandmother's songs, humming them under his breath when the nights are long. Jensen keeps his silence, but once, just once, he told me his daughter used to sit on his shoulders at parades. He said it like he was telling me a secret, then never mentioned it again. Mitchell writes his memories, scribbles them into his notebook, though he won't share. Rhodes never speaks of home, but I see it in his eyes when he looks out the window too long. We all carry pieces of other lives. The storm outside shakes the walls, but inside it's the memories that keep us awake. Last night, as the snow fell harder, I imagined the sound of rain back home. Not the sharp bite of snow, not the silence of frost, but rain, soft, steady, tapping against windows, soaking the ground. I imagined lying in bed, listening to it, safe, warm, unafraid. That memory nearly broke me. Strange, isn't it, how comfort can hurt more than fear? If I could send this, Mother, I'd tell you that the hardest part of war isn't the noise. It's the quiet that drags you backward, into memory, into home. It's the way the past sits beside you on a cold bunk, whispering details you thought you'd forgotten. That's what lingers. That's what keeps me awake. The frost on the window deepens tonight, branching into new shapes. Outside, the snow erases footprints, covers the roads, buries the ruins. Inside, we sit with our memories. Morales humming. Jensen shuffling. Mitchell scribbling. Rhodes steady as ever. And me, writing words you'll never read. But somehow, even unsent, they feel like a connection. A thread stretching across the ocean, across the distance, carrying me home for just a moment. Your son. Dear Father. I don't know if you remember the way the house used to sound different whenever someone was missing from the table. Even if it was only one of us, the silence spread to every corner. That's what I'm writing about tonight. The absence of one man, and how much space it leaves behind. They reassigned Jensen yesterday. No warning, no explanation. One moment he was here, cards shuffling steady in his hands. The next, he was packing what little he owned into a duffel, lacing his boots slow, like each knot might change the order. He didn't speak much. He never did. He just folded his blanket, slipped his deck into his pocket, and nodded once at us before stepping into the cold. We didn't ask where he was going. In war, you learn not to. Sometimes men come back. Sometimes they don't. The silence of not asking is easier than the weight of answers. But the bunk he left behind feels louder than anything. The mattress, stripped bare. The blanket folded neat. Boots gone from beneath the frame. Just emptiness where a man once sat, once shuffled, once carried his silence like armor. Morales tried to hum that night, louder than usual. But it sounded wrong. His notes bounced against the walls and died too quickly. Mitchell scribbled for hours, his pencil scratching like a desperate attempt to fill the gap. Even Rhodes lingered by the empty bunk longer than he needed to, adjusting the frame, smoothing the sheet, before walking away without a word. Father, I thought you'd understand this part. How absence can weigh more than presence. How silence spreads from one man's bunk to every corner of the barracks. It's not about what we lost. It's about what's no longer there to hold the waiting steady. I kept expecting to hear the shuffle of cards. Late at night, when the stove flickered low and men shifted in their sleep, I thought I heard it. Just once or twice. The soft slap of paper. But when I opened my eyes, the table was empty. The strange thing is, I didn't know him well. Not really. A handful of words, a few half-stories about home, the rhythm of cards in his hands. Yet his absence feels like a missing tooth, your tongue always searching the gap, surprised to find it empty. Mitchell muttered once, he didn't even say goodbye. No one answered. What could we say? In war, goodbyes are rarer than letters that make it home. That night, the barracks felt colder. The stove glowed the same, the bunks creaked the same, the snow pressed against the windows just as it always had. But without Jensen's quiet presence, the air felt thinner. The waiting sharper. The silence heavier. If I could send this, Father, I'd tell you that war is measured less by battles than by the weight of empty bunks. It's the absences that mark the days. A man gone. A voice silenced. A rhythm broken. And the rest of us left to fill the quiet however we can. I fold this page now with the image of that bunk still in my mind, empty, silent, heavier than any battle. Another letter written, another letter never sent. Your son. Dear whoever finds this. I've written so many pages now that I don't know who they're meant for. Mother, father, brother, sister. Maybe for no one at all. Maybe just for myself. Tonight I write one more. Not to send. Just to leave behind, folded in the dark, like the others. The barracks is quiet now. Quieter than usual. The stove burns low, its glow soft against the boards. Morales has finally fallen asleep, his humming silenced for once. Mitchell lies curled on his bunk, notebook clutched to his chest. Rhodes sits by the door, steady as always, his head tilted as if listening for something none of us can hear. Outside, the snow falls again. Soft, steady, covering the ground, erasing the footprints of yesterday's patrol. By morning, the world will look untouched, as if no one ever walked these roads, as if no boots ever pressed into the frost. The war leaves marks, but the snow always tries to take them back. I sit at this desk with a candle burning low, pen in hand, paper smudged where my fingers pressed too hard. The words come slow, uneven, like the rhythm of breathing when you're tired but not asleep. If I could send this, I'd tell you the truth, that the war is not made of battles, but of waiting. Not of victories, but of silences. It's measured in empty bunks, in the sound of cards shuffling, in the scratch of pencils, in the hum of half-remembered songs. That's the part no one writes home about. But it's the part that stays. I think of Jensen, gone now. Of his quiet, his cards, his absence that still echoes in the room. I think of Morales, trying to fill every silence with sound, even when the sound is only for himself. I think of Mitchell, writing fragments, trying to pin down memory before it disappears. I think of Rhodes, steady as stone, watching us all without ever needing to explain. And I think of home. The porch, the fields, the rain tapping against windows. The creak of floorboards. The warmth of voices. All the things I've carried in these pages. Maybe that's what these letters are. Not records, not messages, but a way to keep home alive when the world around us tries to erase it. If you never read this, if no one ever does, that's all right. These words were never meant for the world outside. They were meant for the silence. To fill it. To keep it from breaking me. The candle burns lower now. Its light wavers across the paper, across the rough boards of the desk. Soon it will go out, and the barracks will be dark, filled only with the sounds of breathing, of snow pressing against the windows, of silence stretching into tomorrow. I'll fold this page, leave it with the others. Unsigned. Unsent. A stack of words written not to be delivered, but to be kept, by me, by the war, by whoever finds them in the years to come. This is my goodbye. Not to you, not to home, but to the silence itself. The silence that has held me, shaped me, spoken louder than any order or battle. I'll carry it always. And maybe that is what war truly is, not noise, not fire, but the silence that lingers after. The candle flickers once, twice, then steadies. I set down the pen. I breathe. I wait. Another letter written. Another letter never sent.